Hi guys, and welcome back to the Healthspan Collective. On today's episode, we have Andrew Lacy. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Prenuvo. Prenuvo you have likely seen on social media. They are a full-body MRI company. I recently went and did a scan, and I will be having my whole family go and do a scan soon. I think it is such an incredible way to be proactive and preventative with your health and get data that we just don't get in the traditional healthcare system here in the US. I loved this episode and getting to know Andrew. He's such an interesting guy. I hope you enjoy. Andrew Lacy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Nicole. It's great to be here.
So you are the founder and CEO of Prenuvo. Can you please give our audience a little bit of the skinny on what Prenuvo is and what problem you are solving?
Well, I think if you have audience members that are on Instagram, they've probably heard a little bit about us. But to recap, we are a whole body screening company with offices around North America. And what makes us unique is that we have these tremendous clinics that have incredible MRI hardware and a wonderful clinical team that can do clinical diagnostic whole body imaging in about 45 minutes. So in that period of time, we scan the entire body to look for cancer at stage 1, to look for 500 other conditions, really give people a tremendously comprehensive report into the state of their health.
Right. So I had the privilege of doing a scan a few weeks ago, and it was an incredible experience. And I'd love to get into just the details of the experience because it's so different than a traditional medical experience, in my opinion. But first, I would love to know, was there one aha moment that you had to create Prenuvo?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there was a clinic that was doing an earlier version of these Prenuvo scans up in Vancouver, Canada. I actually went to that clinic as a patient.
Oh, okay.
And, I had such a profound experience, learning about my own health. And in a big way, just finally learning and getting peace of mind so I didn't have to spend so much time stressing about the state of my health.
Right.
That I didn't leave the clinic. I sort of hung out there for about 6 months, and I met probably 150 patients that went through that clinic.
Wow. Okay.
I sat down with all of them afterwards, and sometimes during sort of a consultation that they did. And, these people, in over 150 patients, you can imagine we had people that had all clear. We had people who had normal wear and tear. We even had people that had quite serious findings like cancer. Mm-hmm. And for me, what was most profound was that regardless of what people learned about their health, I observed this like profound sense of gratitude that for the first time they really had clarity.
Yes.
And some of them even get up and hug the radiologist afterwards. So, which I thought was just so interesting because I never ever had a desire to hug a doctor before in my life. And so I just felt like something was there, the sort of comprehensive nature of these, of this sort of service was touching on something that people were really looking for and weren't getting from the healthcare system.
Absolutely. So you found that whether somebody got kind of a clean bill of health back or they found something significant, it gave them a sense of relief to really know what's going on in their body. Is that accurate? Yeah.
And by the way, almost 180 degrees different to how they might have felt before the scan. I think a lot of people maybe felt a little bit nervous. What are they going to find? Do I really want to know? But I think when they got that report and and it's about a 10 to 20 page report, depending on the person. It goes through every single system of the body and every organ. And if we see something, what is it? And what should you do about it? And the goal is at the end of reading that report that you as an individual are really empowered to take control of your health. And I think that's such a different perspective. I think a lot of people feel like in the traditional healthcare system, we're just sort of passengers. Mm-hmm. We're being shuttled from one test to the next. And a lot of doctors treat us like we're not smart enough to be able to make good decisions about our health or really understand what's going on. And I think from the beginning, that was not, we wanted to take a different approach.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have 2 health optimization clinics here in South Florida. And that's a conversation I have with patients every day is, the difference in entering this side of the medical world, in my opinion, is really taking the fate of your health out of just at the hands of the doctor, and kind of that old school thought process of, okay, I just do what my doctor tells me, and really having a say and getting to, drive the ship a little bit. So I felt the same way as a patient, just getting that data to understand, okay, I thankfully, knock on wood, I am in good health. And, especially I have a severe family history of breast cancer on both sides of my family. And I'm under 35, so I can't do a mammogram yet. Or at least it's not recommended for me to do a mammogram yet. So it was really relieving to be able to get that data and understand, I don't have anything to be concerned about right now.
Yeah, and in some ways, mammogram's a great story to double click on for a second, because
okay,
mammogram. There's been sort of a professional medical statement of opinion about the role of mammogram. That has been updated every sort of 5 to 10 years over the last 30 years, and a while back they weren't offering mammograms for people, I think, even earlier than the age of 50, and it's sort of slowly crept down. But like at any one point in time, people have said, hey, if you went to your doctor, say you shouldn't get a mammogram because, the risk of you having breast cancer is so low. And statistically speaking, if we did this across the entire population, this would be the outcome. And I just think it sort of ignores it's just a very brutal approach to healthcare, because, you're an individual, you're not a statistic. You only have one life,
Right.
And really you want to live your best life. And that means tailoring your preventive healthcare to, your individual risk circumstances.
Absolutely. And especially, it's something we talk about at an executive level so often, because it is, when you have businesses in your name and you have so many people relying on you showing up every day, to me, it's an even larger conversation of, I need to make sure I'm in good health to, it's not just about me, and it's not even just about my family. It's about, all of these people around me. So it kind of relieves a little bit of that pressure when okay, I'm doing okay, and we're gonna keep it going.
Well, by the way, we assess before people come in and after people leave their level of anxiety. That's one of the things that we track.
Okay.
It's sort of a soft outcome, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like what we found. But what I find really profound is about 30% of people coming in are already anxious about their health.
Really?
Anxious about your health, you're not living your best life. You're not as productive in your workplace. You're not as good a partner to your, to your spouse, or you're not as good a parent, because part of your brain is constantly churning over this thing that's causing anxiety. And so I feel like, we're in the business of curing anxiety. I think it's probably been the biggest impact we've had since we began. It's just, there's a whole bunch of people out there that are walking around feeling comfortable in their skins, probably for the first time in their lives.
Yeah. That resonates so much, because like I said, I have a deep family history of breast cancer, and it's something that I think about, but it's not something that really plagues me. But I actually have a good friend whose mother died of ovarian cancer at a very young age. And it went undiagnosed for a very long time. And it's something that, affects us all, but especially her own daughter. It's beyond a daily thought. It was all day, every day. And she did a Prenuvo right before I did. And it was hugely relieving to understand what was going on inside of her body and what to keep an eye on. How often do you recommend most people do a Prenuvo scan?
Well, we designed it as an annual physical. So the goal really is to come back every year. The scans become even more accurate the more you do them, because we don't only just compare you in an absolute sense to what we understand about disease, but we're also able to compare you against you a year ago. So oftentimes there might be very small things. We might see a very small cyst or a lesion that's tiny. It's so tiny that we can't even characterize it. And then, we're able to look a year later and say, okay, has it changed? Is it stable?
Right.
If it's stable, then it's benign. And so longitudinally, these scans are really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, as you said, even for just the peace of mind as we age as well. Yeah. Speaking of age, if you had to choose one age in particular that you think it would be most important to get a Prenuvo scan, What age would that be?
I can never really answer this question because obviously, the older you get, the more wear and tear you have. So the more time chronic disease, is able to sort of like take root, whether that's neurodegenerative disease or MSK degeneration or metabolic disease.
Right.
And certainly you're more likely to get cancer. But a lot of these conditions, and particularly cancer, can be more aggressive the younger you are. So, our youngest patient is 18. Our oldest patient, I think, is now 98. And I asked the 98-year-old when I saw him in the clinic the other day, why are you coming in to do these things? What's up with this?
Right.
He's like, well, I want to live another 10 years. So
wow.
You're also never too old for it.
No, absolutely. What do you say? Because I have heard some doctors with a more traditional mindset say almost like if something isn't symptomatic, it might go away on its own. Like I have heard a few people say, oh, I wouldn't recommend that to my patients because, you might find some things that don't necessarily need to be treated. And it causes, kind of back to that anxiety piece, could cause them more anxiety for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you hear this argument in the context of cancer.
Right.
Oh, like it's a small cancer. Maybe it never grows or maybe it never... And by the way, this is true. I mean, for people... just to talk a little bit about how cancer sort of like progresses is... We think of cancer as just being sort of like this homogenous thing, but it's not. It's very heterogeneous. It's a sort of, this tumor is constantly evolving and mutating, and parts of it acquire like, certain mutations that enable it to evade the immune system or to metastasize to a distant location. And you can think of each of these sort of like mutations that are almost like a lock, and as the cancer keeps proliferating, it has more and more shots at like designing the key to unlock the next gate.
Right.
It's entirely possible, statistically speaking, that a cancer may never acquire all the keys to get to the point where it metastasizes. So it's a true statement, but the reality is for the individual that has a stage 1 or a stage 2 cancer, I mean, their a priori risk has just changed completely.
Right.
And what you care about is your sort of actual risk. So it can that statement can both be true. It may not kill you, and also completely irrelevant as it relates to how you think about your health.
Yeah, that's how I thought about it. I'm someone, and I think my parents are both this way as well, which is probably what makes me this way. But I'm someone, I love information in general, but especially about my own health and my own body. And it's something to me that, kind of coming back to the ovarian cancer piece, if it's something that my family friend could have found 10 years prior to her diagnosis or 5 years prior to her diagnosis, would her outcome have been different? This could have been a life-saving scan for her.
Yeah. By the way, ovarian cancer is such an interesting one because it highlights the barriers, particularly for women, to get sort of taken seriously in the healthcare system. Because how does it, when you're symptomatic, typically those symptoms are sort of not that different to the feelings, to the pain that a woman might feel periodically anyhow. So you have to convince yourself that there's a problem.
Yes.
Then you have to go to your doctor and convince the doctor that this is unusual, and then eventually get testing. So when people come in, we ask about symptoms, but frankly, what's nice about these scans is, we look for everything.
Right.
The symptoms are helpful in diagnosing things, but they don't in any way change what we look for. We look for everything because a lot of things we find you can be asymptomatic.
Right. And you mentioned it's looking for 500 different diagnoses in the body or diseases in the body. What are some of the biggest ones that are most often found?
Yeah. We mentioned cancer. So the sort of, like the potential killers would be cancer and aneurysms. These are things that, cancer can grow quite fast. Aneurysms can be present for a certain period of time. And then if they burst, unfortunately, it's more likely than not that that's fatal.
Right.
And then beyond that, sort of like the big chronic diseases. So we look at the brain and we can get a sense of, neurodegenerative condition, how how blood is perfusing through the brain, what your brain volume looks like relative to people your age. We look at spine, and we see a lot of spine conditions, particularly among young people now.
Really?
Yeah, it's just very concerning, I think. And most likely a function of sitting a lot and mobile phones.
I was going to say, is that from us looking down?
Yeah, the neck is not designed to sort of be held in that position for a long period of time. And so that asymmetrically loads the discs in the cervical spine, and you get disc bulges. And we are seeing disc bulges in 25-year-olds that you typically would see in a 45-year-old.
Wow.
On metabolic condition, we are seeing in our cohort of patients, we see fatty liver in about 20% of patients.
Really?
In the overall population, it's closer to 35-40%. So, our patients are a little bit healthier than the average, but still 20% is a lot. And the vast majority of people don't know.
Absolutely. So what are we attributing that to? Just modern day diet and lifestyle?
For sure, it's sort of mediated by diet and lifestyle, but there's a big genetic component as well. So,
Really?
We will often see, sometimes we see folks that, on the outside you would think are pretty healthy. They have a good BMI, they exercise and so on, but because they have a genetic predisposition to deposit fat in the liver, we see sometimes severe fatty liver without them even realizing.
Wow, that is so interesting.
What they're doing is actually making it worse. I mean, I remember one guy who was doing triathlons, and he would so he's exercising so much, so he would carb load. He's eating a lot of pizza, a lot of pasta, and to get the energy back that he's expending,
right,
with exercise. But a lot of it was just getting deposited in his liver. The liver couldn't process it, so he was pre-diabetic, and one of the people I met.
Wow, that is so interesting. And and just so that everybody understands the process of working with you all, and tell me if this has changed at all, but it's, you come in, you do your scan with Prenuvo, you wait, I think it was about a week or so until I had my full results back with the reports. And then you can either work with a practitioner on the Prenuvo team or a practitioner on your end. So I worked with one at my clinic and we reviewed it all together. And then it's from there that if you find anything acutely that you go to a specialist. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you can think of us as there to help you on your preventative health journey. Now, if we find things that require, for which medical intervention is recommended, then either we connect you with someone if we have them in our network, or you would go back to your primary care provider and then they would connect you with a specialist, or you would work with your primary care provider to sort of work on whatever treatment might be appropriate. So that's a general approach.
Okay, great. And then you had mentioned earlier on that, if you are on Instagram, you may have seen us because you guys work with so many prominent celebrities, which I'm sure is a strategic move on your and the marketing team's part. And I know Olivia Munn is actually a prominent celebrity that found breast cancer through her Prenuvo scan. Is that correct?
I would have to check. They all sort of start to blend, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
If that's the case, yeah, I mean, look, we've had lots of really interesting findings. And we're so grateful for folks to share those results. And this is going to sound super old-fashioned, but when we started the company, we just said, look, this is a new category of business. It's going to be very expensive to acquire people if we have to go out there and advertise.
Right.
People aren't Googling for whole body screening. They're just going about their day and they don't even realize that this technology exists.
Right.
From the very beginning, we said, let's just focus on providing a really incredible service. Mm-hmm. And if Nicole comes in and has a great experience, Nicole is going to tell her friends or family, if she can buy her mother a scan for Christmas, or who knows, right?
Right.
And, as we started to move into some of these markets like LA and Miami and New York, all of a sudden, some of these patients that came in were high impact voices, and they were very excited to share. So we we leaned into this, but it's really out of a desire from these folks to share with people that are following them something that they found profoundly helpful. and in doing so, hopefully have a positive impact on people's lives. And so we're just really grateful for the sort of for sharing, something that normally is pretty intimate, a health checkup with such a large audience.
Absolutely. And it really is, to me, it's so impactful. I feel the same way about our businesses when people with high impact share about their experiences here. Because there's truly no marketing or advertising campaign that you do that will hit home for others as much as a personal story from someone they feel connected to does. And B, I think it really removes, not that there's stigma, but I guess maybe stigma just about sharing sometimes. I think people keep a lot of their personal stories close to the chest. And when somebody with a large voice does come out and talk about these things, it kind of, removes that cloud over it. And that was, I can insert a fact check at the end if I'm incorrect about the story, but if I remember it correctly, Olivia Munn was someone who, she came and did a Prenuvo scan with you all, a full body MRI, and actually found a tumor the size of a tangerine that was inverted. So it wasn't, you would think a tumor the size of a tangerine, especially for someone as, thin as she is, you would feel that, but it was actually like concave into her chest cavity. Yeah. But because she found it early enough, she was able to, I believe she did a double mastectomy and a bit of radiation, and she's totally fine now. And she has small children, and it was definitely a life-changing event for her. But thank God she took a preventative approach with you all and didn't find it 5 years from now when it would have been a much different scenario.
Yeah, no, they're great stories. And just sort of highlight how far our health system is from, optimal approach to preventive health.
Yes, exactly.
Until they were symptomatic or until they had advanced to a certain stage.
Right.
This is the mission of the company, is to really change healthcare.
Right. So I know there are so many, but are there any stories of other celebrities that have really stuck out to you and really, made an impact on your experience?
Well, for me, it's and you could look up sort of many of the stories. There was a story with Maria Menounos where we helped find a pancreatic tumor. But for me, actually, the things that I like are the stories that aren't about cancer, because I think cancer is a given. It's a big part of the reason why people come in, but the scans are just so comprehensive that they can help people in lots of different aspects of their life. I'll give you two examples. The first one was a woman who had one child and then had like 5 or 6 miscarriages. And this actually is a celebrity. Okay. And she had gone to doctors to try and figure out why she had these miscarriages, and no one really had been able to provide information. Came in for a Prenuvo scan, and we found that she had a septated uterus. So this is a uterus. The uterus, when you're a fetus, it starts in 2 pieces and sort of comes together, and eventually you have like one uterus. But sometimes they're not full. They don't fully. The uterus doesn't fully fuse together, so you end up with almost 2 chambers, and it's very, very hard to carry a pregnancy to term. And that first child that she had was a real miracle, and it's a very simple surgery to resolve that problem and make it much more likely that you can carry children. And this is something that we did for her, and we've done for other women that were having trouble carrying pregnancies to term. So that's one story. That I think as someone who has a 1-year-old and sort of went through the journey of like, the hard journey of having children. It's not like what they teach you in high school. I can really appreciate that. And I think that's something I'm proud of. And then here's one that's not even really a medical issue per se, but we had a patient came in and said, look, I try everything, but I can't lose weight. And I would like to know what's going on. So we went and screened this person, and what we found is they had an obstruction in their bladder. And what happened was they weren't able to fully go. And over time, it grew like a balloon. So the bladder just sort of grew and grew and grew. And probably at the time we diagnosed this, this person had a couple of gallons of urine bladder in this distended bladder in their belly. And, and we were able to, and presumably after we made this diagnosis, they would have got that drained with a catheter and they would have lost like probably 20 pounds.
Right. Wow.
So it's just, for me, it's just incredible that you can be a middle-aged person and have never looked inside your body. You may never know that you were doing karate as a teenager, you got kicked in the abdomen and one of your kidneys atrophied and died and you only have one kidney. And you may never know that. But you should know that because you want to look after it. You only got one. So there's hundreds of these stories, and they're not always about life-threatening conditions. It's just about having information about what's happening underneath the skin.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think about it, and it's, I always say, like, in 2025, and that, like, we have AI solving all of our problems, right? It's like we have electric cars, we have self-driving cars on the road now. It feels just apropos with where we're at in society that we would be able to take a look under the hood in our body and get a full picture as to what's going on. I love you sharing those stories because it's truly those things that you would never think of on your own. You would never think, maybe I have an obstruction in my bladder and I'm holding 20 pounds of extra urine. Like, who knew that could even happen,
I didn't know until I saw it.
No.
So yeah, I mean the body's interesting. Another one is, sometimes about 1 in 3 or 400 people, their organs are reversed in their body. So the liver is on the other side.
1 in 3?
1 in about 400, I think, or 500. I don't know the exact number. So, but that's still a lot of people,
it is.
Finding this quite routinely, and that's hugely important if you ever need surgery.
Absolutely.
This. You don't want them sort of like operating on the wrong side of your body. So I don't know. I could go on forever. There's so many interesting stories to share.
I'm sure.
But the meta message here is, we spend more money as a society. This is a true fact on maintaining our cars, the vehicles that drive our bodies around in, than we do in maintaining this wonderful organic vehicle that we're sitting inside right now that drives our brain around from one meeting to the next.
It's so true. It brings me to my next question, actually. So it is, it's a luxury experience at a luxury price point. Are there any ways that people can make this scan more affordable for themselves?
Well, we offer financing for folks that would like to pay over time. And we do have people pay 6 months or pay over 12 months. We offer a less expensive scan that mainly is focused around cancer. That's $1,000. Okay. Comprehensive exam that most people do is $2,500, and $2,500 for sure is a lot of money. And we would love to bring that down over time. We're working hard to do that. That said, there are lots of sort of single disease tests that cost hundreds or thousands of dollars, and this is just so comprehensive. So almost like every organ we're screening for $30.
Yes.
So it's sort of probably the most I think it's the best return on invested money in terms of
I couldn't agree more.
Anything else.
I couldn't agree more. As someone in the functional medicine space, and like I said, somebody who loves data about my own body, we do all the functional medicine testing for patients, and I've done almost every one on myself over the years, just trying to get to the root of whatever I was going through at the time. And I thought about it in that way. For the amount of information that you get, to break it down into all of the different organ systems, everything that you can detect, it's actually very inexpensive for all the information that you're getting for yourself. And once again, it comes back to that peace of mind too. What is your peace of mind worth?
Well, and I'm sure, there's that saying that if you went to the hospital to someone who had advanced cancer, and you asked them how much were you willing to pay to like turn back the clock here, or live longer, I mean, it's going to be a way higher number than what it costs to get screened.
Absolutely.
Some people don't have the money. So again, we work hard to sort of figure out how we can make it more accessible as best we can.
Even financing options is great because it can break it down to a very affordable monthly payment for most people.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about one use case I think is relevant for you sort of and the businesses we run, which is around peptides.
Yes, please.
So I think this is a really interesting, as a consumer, I find this a really interesting and fascinating sort of like evolving field. And I hear a lot of really interesting stories. and peptides are sort of, I mean, it's basically just a term that refers to short chain amino acids. So it could mean so many different things. But I do, we have found cancers in people that were on like growth factor peptides.
Right.
And for a lot of people don't necessarily know that can, having a malignancy, those types of peptides are contraindicated in the case of having an active malignancy. So we start to have now physicians that refer us patients before they go on those types of peptides in order to make sure that there's a clean bill of health, and that you're not essentially adding fuel to an underlying malignancy that you're not aware of.
That's incredible, because yes, that is something that we talk about with peptides. And I know it was a big story about NAD a while ago that, if you do a lot of NAD and you have an underlying tumor growing that you're unaware of, it could accelerate the speed of growth. And so I love that. It's something, so we're an owner in Humanot Health. I'm not sure if you're aware of the brand, but we partner together with Prenuvo, as part of one of our comprehensive testing services for all of our patients, or all of our concierge level patients. And that's kind of the ethos of that brand as a whole is, let's understand your body. Let's test. We do a VO2 max. We do strength and mobility, full blood work, carotid artery scan, kind of, you list it, we do it. And Prenuvo is one of those things is at the top of the list for those concierge patients to make sure we understand everything that we're looking at, or we're adding anything new in.
Yeah, I think it's a really smart approach. I think the other one is rapamycin. I don't know if you do that. It's sort of an immune suppressor, and obviously your immune system is something that fights cancer. So you don't want to be systemically suppressing your immune system if there's a malignancy that the immune system is like going to battle against right now. So it sounds like you guys have a really, I think, thoughtful approach to it. But I live in LA. I mean, LA is sort of ground center for, certainly in LA, where you see hundreds of these clinics proliferating pretty quickly. I'm not sure all of the operators of these clinics fully understand, what you should be doing, in conjunction with some of these therapies that they're promoting. And I'm certainly sure that not a lot of consumers fully understand this. So I think businesses like yours, I think, have a big role to play in helping to educate people on how to incorporate peptides and other advanced therapies in a way that is responsible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talk about that a lot in general, that, yes, you can get even, GLP-1s obviously are peptides that are so, there's so much hype about them and they can be so helpful for people, but you really don't want to go, just because somebody's offering it for $200 and, you don't want to go to your cheapest option all the time, because usually you get what you pay for. And you want to make sure you're working with a practitioner who's properly evaluating you, and at the very least doing some comprehensive blood work to make sure, we're attacking the right thing first here. Although
I don't want to, probably because 1 in 20 Americans are on these drugs right now, I don't want to, there's zero evidence that the GLP-1s, promote growth of underlying malignancy. So that there isn't any evidence of.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, we're talking about other peptides, correct?
Yeah, but you might want to know about your sort of like the composition of your body before and after, because there is a lot of conversation around, well, what impact is this having on bone density or muscle volume, and these are sort of things that we are measuring at Prenuvo.
Exactly. So in speaking about making it more common, I know you're opening up a new center in Miami soon. When you look at the future of Prenuvo long term, are you working towards working with, hospitals so that patients, it can become more and more common for patients to get these scans, or are you looking to grow in the private sector?
A combination of the two. When we started the company, we said, hey, we would love to be part of the medical system and be covered by insurance and so on. And we're going to work really hard towards that, but we're not going to sort of predicate the success of the company on waiting for that magic moment to happen. And I think as customers, we shouldn't really be also predicating, like betting our health on that moment happening. I mean, mammogram took 30 or 40 years from the moment it was clinically proven to the moment it was covered by insurance. And imagine how many people unfortunately passed away during that period of time.
Right.
And for sure, in most cases, there's an option to do it yourself. And so we have a lot of patients that come to us that say, hey, I don't want to wait for the sick care system to catch up. I would like to take control myself. But what we are doing is we're running a lot of clinical trials right now. And those trials help us understand what we call sensitivity and specificity of what we're doing. So how good are we at finding underlying disease? And when we find something, how likely is it actually a true positive? And these are both obviously really important metrics. We want to minimize the number of false negatives and minimize the number of false positives. And so we're running these longitudinal clinical trials to collect this evidence. And this evidence really is what is required to then have discussions with insurance companies about potentially covering this for more people.
That's awesome. So are all Prenuvo patients part of those clinical trials or only select patients?
Well, we have a trial site in Boston. So that's a dedicated trial site. Outside of Boston, we do run trials retrospectively sometimes with patients that have come through other clinics. And broadly speaking, I mean, we are building a catalog of disease that we find using these scans. So we are learning from our experience across all of our clinics. The same way that a radiologist might learn from looking at a lot of previous images, they get better and better at what they do. Well, we get better and better at what we do because we're already at such a big scale that we're doing more of these than everyone else put together, and we have a clinical team that's really experienced. So, we continuously want to learn and get better, get more accurate, provide better recommendations, learn from patients that have great experience, learn from patients that have advice on how we can be better. I'm a big believer in that.
I love that. And I know you were mentioning before we started recording that Prenuvo is actually starting to expand beyond just the full body MRI into some other services. Is that correct?
Yeah, we started earlier in the year experimentally adding blood to one of the packages that we have for people. And it was so well received that, over time, we're going to add this to all of the work that we do.
Awesome.
I think blood is really helpful for a few reasons. The first reason is there are still some things that we can't see or can't see as early with imaging that we can see with blood. A simple example of this might be blood cancers, so leukemias. We see them when we start to see marrow expansion usually in the legs, but you'll see that a lot earlier on a blood test that is just measuring white blood cell count. So
that's so interesting. Okay.
So it can help us find things that we can't really see early. And then it also helps us sometimes when we have a differential diagnosis. So when we might see a lesion in the thyroid or in the adrenals, we can know from hormone testing whether that is hormonally active or not. So it's really a case of 1 + 1 = sort of 10.
Right.
So we're excited to roll it out. And I think patients are really excited to just go to one place and get everything that they need.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, you're already there first thing in the morning, fasted. You might as well take some blood at the same time, right?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, we didn't start that way. So when we started rolling out blood, we actually had people come to your house to get the blood test. And we sort of thought that this would be a really sort of concierge level thing to do. But the reality is people didn't like having to sit around at home waiting for this person to arrive.
Right.
And they didn't like the fact that they would have to fast a second time. So, we learned from that experience that, over time we'd like to be able to do this in our own clinics.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know fasting is always the toughest part, right? We're all, at least for myself, because I'm like, my routine is like, I like to get up, I like to drink my matcha, I like to go work out, and then I go do whatever I have to do for the day. But if I'm doing a Prenuvo or I'm doing blood work, I'm like, my workout's not happening if my caffeine's not happening. And if I can't have my caffeine, let's just get this done first thing in the morning.
I'm pretty sure you can have black coffee with those blood tests. You can't do that. That was always my assumption.
It depends on the blood test. If you're testing cortisol, you don't want to test. You don't want to have caffeine because obviously it'll raise your cortisol.
But for getting a Prenuvo scan, that doesn't bother us. We're mainly worried about. We ask people to fast because we don't want a stomach to be distended, and we don't want the gallbladder to. If you fast, your gallbladder is still full of fluid, and it makes it easier for us to see it.
Okay. And can you work out right before or no?
I have never heard that being a contraindication, so I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. I made that one up.
Yeah.
Tell me, has anything about your own health changed since starting Prenuvo? Or I guess I should say the way you approach your own health.
Look, something that most people don't know about me, I run a company that's focused on longevity, but I'm not like a longevity bro. When I went to get my first scan, I was petrified. I almost canceled it.
Really?
So yeah, so I really empathize with people that are nervous about learning about their health. And to this day, even I get a little nervous every time I do a scan, or I get a little nervous every time I go to the dentist. So I've learned through this whole process just how powerful the psychology is of not knowing. And I've come to appreciate that it's not me that created that problem. It's the healthcare system. Because if they're doing such a bad job of catching disease early, and every single story you hear is a horrible story, why would you want to go looking yourself for problems in your own body?
True.
So for me, what I learned through that entire process is, I'm sort of like the canary in the coal mine. Like the more comfortable I start to feel about my health doing these things so longitudinally, the more I feel like I can help other people sort of go through that same journey.
Yeah.
And overcome this psychology that's sort of holding us back.
I'm sure that's a big reason for your success that you're coming from. I think that's a more common approach to, health and healthcare as a whole. People are nervous. It makes people nervous to do testing and to find out. I think there's a little bit of like if I don't, what's it called? If I don't think about it, it's not there. And it does come back to, I mentioned in the beginning, what a nice experience it is to go into the Prenuvo office. And I'm sure that's by design on your part that, just from my perspective, I felt a little bit nervous as well. And I'm not somebody who typically feels that way. I guess I'm just so used to it. I do blood work so often. Like I said, I kind of do this stuff for fun. But it was once you were in there and I saw the full MRI, I was like, holy crap, I'm going in there for an hour. It's a little nerve-wracking. But the office itself is gorgeous, especially your one here in Boca Raton. It's very well designed. It feels like you're in a nice hotel almost. And you're brought back to a private changing room. You're given scrubs to put on, and all of your stuff is safe in that room while you go into your scan. And one person couldn't be nicer than the next. And I know that's all very intentional. Is that something that you thought very thoroughly about?
I mean, it sort of relates to what I was just saying. How can we create an environment that doesn't trigger this anxiety? Right. And, a couple of months back, my wife asked me to drive her to get a mammogram. And, I went into this regular imaging sort of clinic to get this mammogram, and it just felt anxiety inducing.
Yeah.
It really, you can't step into a sick care environment and do preventive health. Mm-hmm. There's something about it that for me, I wasn't even being tested, but I was like, it was affecting my mental state just being sitting in that room.
Yeah, your stomach is like in knots, right?
Right. And so, and so we decided very early on, hey, if we're going to do this, we can't rent time on other people's machines or sort of cut corners here.
Right.
We have to build our own clinics because I don't want to trigger any of that anxiety. I want people to feel really comfortable. And it's been very expensive. We've spent tens of millions, probably over $100 million on building locations.
Right.
But the end result is you have the experience that you had, which is something that probably feels a little bit more like a nice warm blanket, not something that's anxiety inducing.
No, it really does. It makes an enormous difference. And, I know for our clinics as well, that's the number one feedback we get is, I love how beautiful and clean the office is. It makes me want to come back and be here every day. And we've all had that experience of, yes, especially as women going to get, whether it's a mammogram, a breast ultrasound, or a pap smear. And it's like, like the smell of the office alone, you're like, your stomach is in knots and it feels like walking into a hospital. It's anxiety inducing. And you've done a beautiful job of curating the opposite environment. And I also have to note that, so you are in this full body MRI machine for an hour, and you first get in there and I was like, okay, I'm not someone who's claustrophobic, but I could see this producing a bit of anxiety. And then you choose which TV show you'd like to watch while you're in there. And what a world of difference that makes.
Yeah.
Because you're in there for about an hour. I chose to watch Sex and the City, and I was almost like disappointed when it was ending, because it was, it was a work day. I was relaxed.
Well, that's, look, in the sick care system, insurance companies don't pay for that.
Right.
So why would you do that?
Right.
It's not gonna. It's only a cost, and it doesn't increase my revenue. So,
right.
So it's an example of something that you can sort of do if you build your own centers and you're deliberate and mindful about what would make for a great experience. Yeah.
Well, it was a beautiful touch, and I'll end the experience, the talk about the experience, by saying, and then when you're done, you come out and there's a beautiful selection of healthy snacks and coffee and tea, which I also really appreciated, because you're fasted and I was hungry afterwards. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, no, it's a cool experience. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. So I'll leave you with my last question, which is, do you think you'll live longer because of Prenuvo?
Yes, with an asterisk.
Yeah.
Here's my asterisk. It relates back to, am I a longevity quote unquote bro or not? And the answer is absolutely not. My approach to health probably is from what you've said, I probably have a worse routine than you do. And I don't judge anyone that comes in. We have some of the fittest people in the world come in. We have people that might be unfit but just had kids and they want to make sure they're sticking around for longer. I'm a big believer in sort of the 80-20 rule in life in general. It takes 20% of the time to clean your house to 80% cleanliness, but that last 20% cleanliness takes way more time.
Right.
And so, I generally live my life according to this value, and so I'm always very focused on, like, what are the high impact interventions that you can do?
Yeah.
So I'm doing my personal program is the 80% program. Okay. So that probably means I'm not going to live to 200, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
If I can get like another 20 years out of my life, I feel like that, but in the process, I haven't like changed myself into one of these people that never drinks or never goes out to meet people because I have to be in bed at 8 o'clock every day. And, I don't want to have that life. That doesn't sound for me very fulfilling. So I want the version that gets me, another 20 years of my life, but I still have a life. That's my mentality.
I totally agree with that. And, this podcast is called the Health Span Collective, which to me means living healthier into longer years. But to me, living healthy doesn't mean, like you said, living with all this restriction that you don't get to enjoy yourself. It's your routine should fuel your life, your enjoyment, and for me, I'm like, what is life without a beautiful glass of wine here and there, and pizza with my partner, or a late night party when I'm in Spain, So I totally agree with that. It's all about finding the balance that works for you, finding the balance that you can build that 80% of that healthy routine to really support your life to live the happiest version.
Yeah, and I even use my scan in some ways almost like an insurance. It's sort of an insurance for me, because I'm sure you feel the same way. I think that probably building businesses should come with a health warning label, because it's actually, you don't sleep enough. You never fully are without stress. There's always something in the back of your head. You're working too much and so on. So it's for sure not helpful for health.
Yes.
So I also see these scans as a way of like, hey, if there's something really bad going on, I'd be surfing in Hawaii. But so far, so good. So I can keep doing what I'm doing, which hopefully has a good impact on the world.
No, absolutely. That's funny that you say that, because I was speaking with someone the other day who had recently moved into a much more high-powered role than he had ever been in before. And he was talking to me about the fact that he can't sleep. He's having a really hard time sleeping. And I was asking what he's doing to support his health. And it was exactly everything he had been doing for the last, 30 years in his previous roles that were much lower stress. And that was my advice, that, with privilege, it's that Spider-Man quote, with privilege comes great responsibility. And to me, whether you are running your own business or in a very high role in someone else's business, it's your responsibility to take better care of yourself, because you have to do a little bit extra, in my opinion, to maintain your health, because it will take you down. It can take you down. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Or at least, have insight, have knowledge, so that the decisions you're making are like decisions based on knowledge.
I think having that knowledge is part of self-care. Investing in the knowledge about your health is part of it, at least the way I view it. That's part of that self-care.
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Well, it's been great talking.
It's been great speaking with you. Is there anything else you'd love to leave our audience with today?
No, I guess, if people have questions about the scan, they can obviously call us or have a look at our website. We're in 24 locations around the US. We have a location in Australia. I don't have any listeners out there where I'm from, and we have one in London that's opening soon. So hopefully there's a clinic that's close to most of the folks that are following you, and we can have a positive impact on their health.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today, Andrew. And should people follow Prenuvo on social medias and find them there? Are you active on socials as well?
No, they should follow Prenuvo. I think it's probably a bit better. And if they go to prenuvo.com, prenuvo.com, they'll find out more information about the scan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank
Have a good one. This podcast was brought to you by Pureform, a comprehensive wellness center in Boca Raton, Florida. The website is pureformhealth.com, or you can find us on Instagram at pureformhealth. Feel free to message us with any questions, and note that you can connect with our providers for consultations over Zoom, from everything from stem cell therapy to hormone replacement therapy and peptide therapy. That's it for this episode of the HealthSpan Collective. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and send it to a friend. We'd also love to connect with you on Instagram. Follow the podcast at HealthSpan Collective and me at Nicole J. Doran. And leave us a comment on our latest post, letting us know what you'd like us to cover next.